Confucius say, if living is watching television, then watching Pingu is suicide. Ah, shit. Let me start over. Penguins cannot speak English. The most human of the waterfowl. They sit at tables and dine on fine fillet fish, while discussing politics and the importance of the eponymous utensil known as the salt shaker. Don't shake the mouse button with a click away from this fascinating tale, or fold it away if you're reading on parchment, because this is by far the most important, vital thing you will ever hear in the entirety of your lifetime. Nothing is going to be more important than what you hear in this story, ever. For the remaining billion of seconds or so of your life, you have to know this. You have to know about Pingu. The claymation bird is a murderer. He acts innocent, but at night he conspires to wear pants and drive a four-door sedan, playing bocce ball, threatening my family, demanding to be considered human. Something you should know. I'm a Swiss claymation director with personal issues who was fired from now-defunct Hot Animation in 2006 for attempting to blow air under the wings of a bird who could not fly. And that bird was Pingu. If you haven't seen the show, it was a program for children with higher-than-average IQs who wanted to see birds mimic human behavior in intense claymation stereoscopic 3D. All those hours of moving the claymation wings frame by frame, and snapping and moving the wings, and snapping and snapping. It would take us approximately 25,000 man-hours to render a 2-minute snippet of Pingu eating a piece of fish and crying. I started eating a piece of fish and crying. This episode had a strange name. Pingu. The Search for Hitler's Gold. I put the VHS tape in. What in tarnation? Pingu is dancing in his living room with a picture of Adolf Hitler in the background. It wasn't even claymation. It was a real photograph of Adolf Hitler. Like one you would find in the wallet of a neo-Nazi next to photos of his two identical blonde-haired, blue-eyed daughters. And then Pingu spoke. Though he never spoke on the show. Perfect English, and it sounded like one of the directors. He leered through the camera. Then he took out a pipe, and he smiled. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. He smiled, and he smiled some more. He was smoking marijuana. The label said oregano, but I just knew it was marijuana. The label even fell off, and it said marijuana underneath. Then he stood up and walked out the door, revealing rows of penguins. Pingu did a sig hail, revealing that all civilization had been exterminated by penguins who were not wearing clothes because it was their nature, but rather they were a culture of nudists who had learned to walk upright, becoming new hominids and drinking the blood of the innocent. This wasn't children's programming. This programming wasn't for anyone. This was a neo-Nazi training video, designed by the Swiss, who supported not just cheese with holes in it, but Hitler. Adolf Hitler. Did the Swiss support Adolf Hitler? I don't know much about Switzerland, but something was just off about all of this. Pingu tapped on the glass of the television. He tapped on it the way a woodpecker would tap on your corded cell phone if you failed to set up the wiring in a log cabin and birds invaded the only place you called refuge. Trust me, I know firsthand. He broke the glass, and the claymation gentleman strolled out of the TV, moving in real reality, and I suddenly realized the entire universe was stop-motion animation. Someone was painstakingly rendering every single frame anyone ever rendered by hand in glorious 4K quality. And I'm not talking about picture fidelity. God is a very fat man who weighs over 4,000 pounds. Pingu's eyes grew blood red, and his skin became hot as coals as he stomped around my living room, flinging clay not unlike the way an ape would throw a TV dinner if you dressed it up like a human and started feeding it oxycodone. Pingu started eating his own face and smiled, revealing a skull underneath. A smiling skull. How can a skull smile? I just realized that my boss for over a decade at Trick Film Studio was Cal C. And his assistant was, I have a broken bone. What the hell was going on? Pingu was fishing. He cut a hole in my floor and began fishing, but instead of pulling up fish, he pulled up Nazi memorabilia, including a hat, swastika, and a pair of evil German tap shoes. He began to tap dance the German national anthem as I peered out the window. Hundreds of claymation penguins were marching down the street, and they began to dance. They did a dance number. They danced left, they danced right, and the people left their homes. They began to dance along. The people walked out of their homes and began to dance as well. Everybody danced, swaying, dancing, as blood began to rain from the sky. I'm hallucinating. The VHS made a sizzling noise. The dancing grew faster, and the storm drains opened, and insects began to dance. Everything danced, forming a big ball of chewing gum, dancing and laughing. The skeletons smiled, their skulls breaking a bit with tiny fractures as they grinned. That was when the squirrels began talking. There were squirrels in my window. They began to tell me a story. Follow us, they smiled, teeth chittering. We can show you Hitler's gold. I followed the mystical squirrels. I would finally solve the mystery and find Hitler's gold. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hitler never hid any gold. Where were they leading me? The squirrel on the left was named Actinea Richardsoni, and he informed me that he'd been alive for over 2,000 years, living in the same tree, without a human ever noticing that he was an ageless sprite, one of the earliest renditions of conscious life on Earth. Before evolution and dimensions, clumps of matter folded and unfolding, not unlike how television's static dancing is a representation of something that should have always been. And then he gave me an acorn and smiled. He told me to plant it tomorrow morning and a tree would grow that would kill off 99.9% of the population. But then he said, just kidding, and vanished. The flowers began speaking in a strange foreign dialect. I think it was Spanish. Let's watch Pingu, they whispered. And I realized someone died there years ago. I could smell it. It wasn't Hitler's gold. It was a dead horse. I didn't want to watch Pingu anymore. I wanted to go home. The other squirrel, perennial Penningsworth, handed me a knife and told me I would have to murder Pingu and climb inside the body for warmth, for winter was coming, and I don't know, something about Hitler's gold. He just kept talking about Hitler's gold. The horse was dead, flies buzzing around, but the body was still warm. I cut the stomach open and climbed inside the warm entrails, coming covered in horse blood and horse intestines. There was no gold in here. Just half-digested hay and bleeding hearts and lungs. That was when Pingu waddled up to me and screamed. He screamed and began to cry at the fat man covered in horse intestines and horse blood, holding a plastic acorn and squeezing a taxidermied squirrel he found in the garbage can outside a Dollar General. "What's going on?" Pingu screamed in perfect English. He just kept screaming. I smiled at him, big wide smile. And then I said the only thing a man could ever say in this situation. "I'm watching Pingu," I yelled, smiling. Nothing is funny or interesting anymore. That was when the cops showed up, got confused, and left. And I realized that I had become everything that I hate. I felt my face. My old, wrinkled face. A Halloween costume. That's right. My skin is a fucking Halloween costume. I am the lost episode. These shows for children, I've ruined all these shows for children. I didn't know what I was doing. I was new to the game. They canceled my cable. Just want to watch some VT. Coax cables. I took all my VHS tapes to a mountain, well, one of them, and jumped off, landing in the freezing Antarctic. When I woke up, I was inside the television. If you think about it, the glass of an old bubble television is no different from the thin cracking ice that fractures and bubbles and boils and festers and swallows you down to the center of the earth for all eternity. I'm here now. Me, the seal, the snowman. Food doesn't taste like anything. There isn't a day that feels like Halloween, and besides, I need to play with snowballs and wear a baseball cap in sub-Arctic temperature. I mumble strange Swiss gibberish and drink glue out of a candy cane straw. Father! 200 years lasted a minute, and when I blinked, all of time and space had started and ended simultaneously, like a snowball that can never melt because it was never cold to begin with. I smiled at Pingu, but it was a mirror. But it wasn't a mirror. There are no mirrors in claymation. Someone had rendered a duplicate and then left it alone for 100 years. I couldn't move for over 100 years. The worst part was someone had rendered a tear on my eye. But it wasn't a tear. And I wasn't crying. It was a golden tear. A tear made of gold. I'd finally found it. I'd finally found Hitler's gold. Wait a minute, this wasn't Hitler's gold. Gold is yellow. Aluminum used to be more precious than gold. Royalty would wear it to adorn their hands and their feet during their most precious dinner dates until their limbs became fragile and they died. When they died, they'd pull the fillings from their teeth and rattle on to tell the truth. Tell you the truth. The most recent Coca-Cola you drank is worth more than 10,000 man-hours spent toiling in the fields. And you drank it down and didn't bat an eyelash, and now you crinkled the can. You threw it in the garbage. Those 10,000 man-hours and all the blood spilled and dust among dust. The Coca-Cola can, your reaction to it, what actually is in people, and you. You are a person, and you threw it in the garbage. How many hours does it take to do all of this? I can think of something. However, now that I'm here as one of the rendered props, I can think of a thing that is more precious than all the silver and gold and platinum, aluminum, copper, and flowers and dead bodies in the entire universe many millions of times over. And all of us, and all of you, and all of this. And do you want to know what that is? The end.